Good morning and welcome to the Killing Co market update. It's been a very turbulent couple of days for sterling and for the UK market, but despite all that's happened, we're still not really any the wiser as to what is going to happen with Brexit. Let's take a look at the fall in sterling over the last couple of days, which really demonstrates that investors are not particularly confident that the Brexit deal that is currently on the table will get through Parliament. So here's a chart showing sterling versus the dollar over the last 2 days. Now, on Wednesday afternoon, we were told that Theresa May had published the Brexit deal in full and given it to her cabinet. Later that evening, we were told that the cabinet was officially backing the deal, and that was actually taken quite well by the market. And as you can see, there was a very slight rise in sterling. However, the next morning, a number of ministers were very vocally opposing the bill. Dominic Raab resigned, and that was followed by the resignations of a number of other ministers. And we did then see quite a steep fall in sterling, as you can see by the chart. Sterling was down about 2% that morning, and that really is quite a big move for such a major currency. Yesterday as well, the UK market was quite weak. I'm not looking at the FTSE 100 here because that's quite an internationally focused index and it's not a particularly good barometer of what's actually happening within the UK. Instead, we're looking here at the FTSE 250, which is much more UK focused. And as you can see, between the hours of 8 a.m. when the market opened and 4:30 when the market closed, the market did trend steadily downwards. And that wasn't helped by increasing speculation throughout the day that Theresa May would be stepping down. However, after the market closed, she did announce in a press conference that she would be staying put. And I think markets are slightly relieved by that, if not a little surprised. And this morning we have seen the FTSE 250 rising. However, what's going to happen is still very uncertain, and there's still a huge amount of speculation about a second referendum, a leadership challenge, or even crashing out of the EU with no deal. So it remains very much all to play for. And over in the US this week, the FDA, or the Food and Drugs Administration, has announced that it wants to propose a ban on menthol cigarettes. Now, these account for about 30% of the tobacco market over in the US. So if the FDA is successful in getting this ban through, it could be very bad news for tobacco companies. And no doubt tobacco companies will be lobbying quite hard against this, but nonetheless, when the ban was announced, we did see quite significant falls in London-listed tobacco companies. So please do give us a call if you would like to discuss our thoughts on tobacco stocks in more detail. Now, recently we've seen increasing amounts of commentary in the financial press about the divergence in valuations between so-called value stocks and so-called growth stocks. Now, the bull run of the last 10 years has been largely powered by growth stocks, in particular the technology sector. But recently investors have started to say, has the difference between growth stocks and value stocks become too large? Now, this chart here, I think, illustrates this quite well. Now, this is a chart showing value versus growth in the US over the last 20 years. The blue line is the value sector, the beige line is the growth sector. As you can see, in the last 10 years, both have risen, but growth has risen much more significantly. But what's interesting here is the orange line. That shows value versus growth. And that trending down over the last 10 years shows that value is becoming increasingly cheap in relation to growth. And it does look there as though this line has reached almost a record low, or certainly a low for the last 10 years. And that axis on the right hand side shows you that ratio. So I think we've got to a really interesting point here. And there are a number of major investors, for example Warren Buffett, who have started to look more recently at value stocks. And Buffett did announce this week that he is increasing his positions in financials, and for example he has started a position in JP Morgan. So please do give us a call if you would like to discuss in more detail our thoughts about growth stocks versus value stocks. Now, moving on to the week ahead, it's a fairly quiet one for us, but we will be looking ahead to results from AO World, SSP and Marston's. That's it from us. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next Friday.